to move forward with a deal, that is the best way to then get some of these irritants out of the way. But it is important in the meantime that we maintain our preparation for no deal.
It was the news that many of you motorists in the county wouldn't have wanted to hear. As the Brexit Secretary visited Dover, he said the speed limit and barriers on the M20 would have to stay in place unless a Brexit deal was found. Kent MPs on the M20 corridor, including Tunbridge and Morling's Tom Tugendhat and Chatham and Aylesford's Tracy Crouch, had previously campaigned for Operation Brock to be lifted when it was announced that we wouldn't be leaving until at least October. So what do they now make of this latest news?
We have all raised our concerns about this and whether or not there needs to be some flexibility, for example, in the number of lanes that are being used, London-bound, on the M20. Unfortunately, our views, although I'm sure were considered, were not agreed to, and it is, I think, a desperate shame for both those who use the M20 every day and indeed those who live along the A20 corridor, that there will still be this disruption for some months to come.
But speaking at the Port of Dover yesterday, Stephen Barclay rued decisions by MPs to reject the Prime Minister's different deals along the way. Tracy Crouch was one such culprit of that initially, before turning in favour of a deal back in March.
I think that it's important that Brexit secretaries and anybody else who's involved in negotiations understands why Kent is important in the outcome of these negotiations. I think that it's important for us as Kent MPs to continue to stress that and to make sure that people understand that actually not only are we a corridor for people coming in from the continent or indeed going back to the continent, but we have a lot of business that works along those motorway networks as well. In my own constituency, I have a number of logistics and freight firms because they are based in the middle of two motorway networks. So I think it's important that that is reflected when we are talking about the future of Brexit.
So the barriers and speed limits still look to stay in place unless the barriers preventing a Brexit deal aren't lifted too. Harry P. for KMTV.
And to talk more about this, I'm joined by our political editor, Paul Francis. So, Paul, how much of a blow is this for Kent?
Well, it's a bit of a surprise that the Brexit minister went quite so far as he did when he was asked about Operation Brock and particularly the M20. The M20 contraflow has come to symbolise what a lot of people think is wrong with Brexit, and it's having a real impact on the county. He said that it was a necessity for it to stay in place until some kind of deal was reached over Brexit, and then went on to say even if no deal was the final solution, then it would have to stay in place until that had been resolved. So it's bad news for motorists who are coming up to the summer holidays, and it's not hard to imagine how kind of a few crashes, people not familiar with that road, will bring this to the attention of the politicians again. And
this is all happening amidst a leadership campaign within the Conservative Party. What have Kent MPs been saying about that?
Well, it's interesting. There's rather a large field of candidates, 12, so they've got a full team. And one thing that struck me when I've been speaking to the county's MPs is that none of them so far have backed Boris Johnson, and he's seen as the front runner in the parliamentary party and out in the country with the Conservative associations and activists. Now, I suspect he's going to declare his intention to stand at some point, but clearly Kent MPs are not won over by his particular style of leadership.
And you've been talking about this during Paul on Politics as well. Who's been joining you this week?
Yes, we've had Anthony Hook, who's the newly elected Liberal Democrat MEP, he's joined us on the sofa, along with the Asher councillor Brendan Chilton and another Asher councillor, Joe Gideon. So they've had a lot to say about Operation Brock.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for that.